Chciałbym na scenę zaprosić Jaana Saara, przedstawiciel Ministerstwa Spraw Gospodarczych i Komunikacji Estonii, członek zarządu Building Smart International oraz zwycięzca Building Smart International Awards 2022 w kategorii Technology. Opowie, jak w Estonii wygląda proces wdrażania cyfrowych pozwoleń na budowie. Jan, the floor is yours.
Hi everybody. Thank you, Piotr, for the introduction. And it's great and an honor to be here in Poland. And I really enjoyed the previous presentation and congratulations on the implementation of a digital permitting system. And Piotr was very smart in scheduling our presentations back to back. So I will talk a little bit about how we do things in Estonia. And first off, just to give you some background information about Estonia, you probably know where it is, north of Europe, small country, but we are very much a digital society. And we have been called, not by ourselves, but by others, the most advanced digital society in the world. And we have indeed practically all services online. And there's several good reasons for that. We don't have time to go through all of them. But one of the key components is that we've had a mandatory e-identity for all citizens in Estonia. And that enabled digital signatures, which then in turn made it possible to put everything more or less online. And before COVID, we had 3 services that weren't online yet. It was, you couldn't buy real estate, you couldn't get married, and you couldn't get divorced. During COVID, we fixed the real estate part, so now you don't have to physically go to the notary to buy real estate, you can do it online. But the marriage and divorce is something maybe we still want to keep offline and have a human touch involved there. But moving on to the building part, the building registry. We've had a fully digital building permit system, a building permit process since 2016. And all building permits in Estonia are handled digitally through a centralized system by all municipalities. And this system also, by using more modern terms from the EU, it can be called a building logbook, is where we store all the information about buildings, about the built environment. And it's not only about building permits, there's several other permits. There's lots of services that this provides. There's the construction notification, there's the usage permit, all kinds of demolition permit as well. All of them are digital and all of them are centralized. But the problem with this system is, here's a picture of what a building permit in Estonia looks like. It's a digital container file that contains an automatically generated PDF which is digitally signed. So nothing really to look at, but it's fully digital. But the problem is that the whole process has been modeled after a paper-based process. So before that, of course, we also had exactly the same issues. My Polish colleague emphasized in her presentation, huge amounts of waste of paper, time, etc. But the problem remains that we still modeled the process after the paper-based process. So there you have PDFs, you have DWGs, you have zip containers with design files, but that is not really machine readable. So right now, what we need is data. We don't need a file, we need data. And that's why we are moving kind of to the next generation. And just as a side note, our objective at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications, where I'm from, is to increase the construction sector productivity 3 times. Sounds ambitious, right? But that will take us to the EU average by 2030, actually. But being average doesn't sound very, very ambitious. But before I talk about the application of BIM in the building permit process, I want to introduce the concept of killer apps. How many of you know what a killer app is? I don't know, some people know. Good. But I will explain it just in case anyway. A killer app is a use case that makes you want to use a concept or a system that you might otherwise not see a need for. For example, the first killer app for the personal computer was VisiCalc, which was came before Excel. So essentially, spreadsheet programs were the killer app for the personal computer because every office wanted one, and everybody wanted to do and calculate numbers using spreadsheets because, and to be honest, who doesn't use Excel in this room? We all use Excel. All of our work boils down at some point or another to using an Excel table. So that was one of the first killer apps. For desktop publishing, or for the graphical user interface, Windows, everything first came on the Mac. Desktop publishing was the killer app because for the first time, newspapers, magazines, they could really design and format their products visually. Before that, it was a very tedious manual process, and that's why every newsroom publisher wanted to have a graphical user interface computer. For the internet, the killer app, what was it? It's tough to maybe say. Some say it was the HTML programming language. Some say it was email, again, something we use every day, and we can't get around it. The killer app for the iPhone, one of the most successful products in the history of mankind, was actually the App Store that made people want to use an iPhone. Was because you could for the first time on a smartphone, install applications very easily and in a very smart way. And this brings us now to BIM-based permits. And I think applying BIM into the building permitting process is actually one of the killer apps for BIM. Why? Because we are bringing the benefits of BIM that I think most of the people here in the audience already know about, that you enjoy, but we are taking this to a whole new audience, and we are broadening the reach of this technology to municipalities, to people who are not maybe specialized engineers or architects who need to review, fire safety people, environmental inspection guys, the neighbors, they also want to understand what's going to be built next door. And I have a small video here that gives a short overview of the system we've now developed in Estonia. And it starts, of course, by uploading an IFC to the building registry. So it's all web-based, it's in the cloud. And it's a self-service platform. The applicant is able to upload the model to the building registry, and obviously we rely on open formats. That's the only way to go. The IFC file is stored in a database, in a government database, and you have an integrated viewer, and you can do automated checks on these models. Exactly what was said in the previous presentation in the end, that you want to automate a lot of the stuff. So this is exactly what BIM enables and allows us to do, is to automate many of the tedious checks. And it's integrated into the building registry, so for the users, for the municipality officials, it will be a very comfortable space, because they don't have to install anything, they don't need a new computer. It is just an added option there. And you can, what you need also to enable this, you need a digital twin of the surrounding environment. So we have a national digital twin which contains, which shows all kinds of restrictions, the other buildings, different maps, different layers. And this is actually needed so you can put the building into a context. Otherwise, it's just there in an infinite space. But having it in context with the surrounding environment creates a much better overview and allows you to analyze and to review the model itself. And you have very basic model viewing options. You can measure, you can cut floors, but we try to keep it really as stupid simple as possible. But this is the killer app part. These are the automated checks. So we have about 47 different checks that we've automated in the first release. Here, for example, there's a way to see whether or not the doors open in the right direction. You can highlight all the checks in the model at once. You can look at them individually. we have different regulations that we examined which kind of checks to do. For example, there's a regulation that all apartments or dwellings need to have an exit into a public space. So we use IFC spaces, zones, to analyze that and to check whether or not all spaces have that exit. You can do accessibility checks, for example, off-ramp, whether the inclination of the ramp is of the correct angle and whether or not a wheelchair can pass through all the corridors. Also, we can do checks to see if people can fall off somewhere, if there's something missing, if something is obstructing accessibility. And some checks are quite simple. We're using parameters, but some checks are very complex. They're using graph analysis, and they're using voxels, 3D pixels. For example, this one is showing whether or not the evacuation length of any point in the model in the building, it meets minimum requirements, which is 30 meters to a fire door or an external exit. You can leave comments there because there's always going to be comments, there's always going to be exceptions. You can export the results because, again, you're doing this before you click the button to submit. You can export the results as BCF, and you can take it to your team, and you can then work on fixing them, and you can rerun the checks. So this was a very quick overview because Anna only gave me 15 minutes. But I could explain a lot longer and go through a lot more of these checks that we have. But really, why we started this BIM-based development was mainly for 3 key reasons. First of all, we wanted to make the building permitting process faster, a lot faster. And it's an issue everywhere. The second one is that by automating these checks, we are standardizing and we are actually creating more transparency. Because in Estonia, even in a small country like ours, different municipalities, they check different things, you know? The one municipality in the north of Estonia would check different things than a municipality in the south of Estonia. And you really have no way of knowing exactly what they're going to check. But if we automate the checks, if we standardize them, then we reduce a lot of this, fuzziness and vagueness. And the third reason is to increase the quality of the buildings. So if we can automate some of these tedious technical checks that would take a lot of time for a person to go through. And to be honest, most of the municipalities, they never do these checks, these technical checks. They rely on, whether or not a proper architect or engineer has signed off on the project, and the responsibility is on them. Okay, but people make mistakes. So we get a lot better quality models, better quality buildings, and we get a lot of data, structured data, that we can then use later on in different life cycle processes. And some more pictures. And it's not, we're very proud of the development we did, but this was recognized by others as well, namely Building Smart International, and it was awarded Best of Technology to our development partners. Future Insight, which is a Dutch company, and a lot of collaboration on this topic is happening all over Europe. So there's 3 parallel projects, Horizon projects. There's Accord project, which we are in with our colleagues from Finland, Netherlands, Germans, and several other countries. There's the Czech project, and there's the DigiCzech project. Piotr is also involved in one of those projects. So, and this just shows you how much development and interest there is to implementing BIM into the building permitting process. And again, I would say it is one of the killer apps for BIM. And of course, you cannot get around the standards, the sexy part of all this, standards, really. But you can't get anywhere without them. And we are very strong proponents of open standards. OpenBIM, of course, we're using IFC. We are using our BIM requirements. We're turning into IDS format. BSDD is something we want to implement as well. And other standards like CityGML for the digital twin, which is kind of like the IFC for the GIS world from OGC. and CCI, of course, to cover everything that IFC and CDGML don't cover. Just some more additional information about CCI. So we're very happy to work with you guys, our Polish friends, and yeah. So that means together it's 30 minutes, right? 1 and 3? No, it's 3. Or okay, I will speed it up a little bit and not spend too much time on CCI. But the idea is that we have a common core, and the CCI was created. And we set up a non-profit in Brussels so that it would always be free and it would always be collaborative. Everybody who is part of CCI collaboration kind of has an equal say in the development of the system. And yeah, some pictures about the setup, but you can get a lot of information from Building Smart here in Poland as well. And something that was also mentioned in the last presentation about having a common standard for BIM or the requirements for BIM. In Estonia, we also developed our common BIM requirements, and we used already, our industry was very, very used to BIM already, and that's why we didn't have to invent them, but we did kind of have to figure out what is the minimum part that we need for the building permit checks, and that is. There's a lot of content and a lot of tables, but you really need collaboration between public and private sector to pull any of this off. We have a public clients BIM task group, so we don't put, like the Finnish guys did, we don't put into the legislation that you must present an IFC model. We want to make it so compelling, so good, that people will want to use it because it's faster, easier, and better quality. But again, public clients are the ones that we can really kind of a little bit nudge further and push them a little bit more to demand BIM in their contracts. And that's ultimately that, you can have it in regulation, but if it's not there in the heads of the clients, and they don't understand why they're doing it, then you might not get far either. So we work with the clients, we work with the sector, we have the Estonian Digital Construction Cluster, that is working with us, and we're using everything that we can find internationally, cooperating. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we steal with pride wherever we can. We have a strategic document that supports us that we also did together with the sector and is approved by Parliament. And there it's also all about moving forward with the innovation and digitization. And the building permit system is just part of the e-construction platform, a more holistic approach to connecting built environment data and services. So here is kind of what the building registry offers, but we're expanding that. We're creating a utility network database, a 3D network database that also covers all the underground utilities centralized in Estonia. BIM-based building permit system I already talked about. The digital twin, which brings together and visualizes all the restrictions related to any part of or any piece of land in Estonia. And this means we're connecting a lot more databases, but we're not creating a super database or a super system. It's a distributed architecture because you need to be able to develop services independently and in an agile manner. Spatial planning and also private sector services are something that we want to see on the same e-construction platform. And in the end, the platform itself is also not a huge information system. It's a set of agreements, actually, about having a common API architecture so that we can exchange information, a common language, so we try to use the classification systems, open formats, but above all, a common philosophy that we come out of our silos and we look at what others are doing and use their data as well and provide our data. But all of this technology is actually easy. The hard part is the implementation. And this is where we're also just starting. The BIM-based permits, we're now piloting in Tallinn, the biggest municipality in Estonia. And it's kind of like, you have to get to the top of the mountain. You have all your tools, all your gear, all the technology, all the systems in your backpack, but we're still there at the foot of the mountain. But we're on our way, The one guy is already quite far. So So we're getting closer to the summit, but it's still a long way to go. And yeah, to end my presentation, just a quick plug. If you want to enjoy all the services Estonia has, you can become an e-resident of Estonia. You can set up a company. You can do almost everything online. And we already have over 100,000 e-residents in Estonia. But with that, I would thank you. And if you have any questions or we have time for questions, then please do so.
We have one question, the most rated. What about roads and railways permits? Do you require IFC for infrastructure? IFC 4.3 is pretty new.
Very good question. For roads and rails, most roads are, the highways are built by the Transportation Authority in Estonia, and they are a little bit of world of their own, of course, as they are road and rail guys. They don't yet demand IFC, but they are moving that way, and they're doing a lot of pilots, and we're very much looking at our Finnish colleagues, how they're doing, because they're very much involved with IFC roads, and we hope to copy what they're doing quicker.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.